All right, I have word. We're gonna make this happen now.
All right, nice.
So we have a bunch of questions again, just like last month. First of all, welcome everyone who's in the chat. This is the monthly AMA with Y.GG, and we have Vendetta here, as you can see. So a lot of people have, yeah, Vendetta and the mustache is here. So there's been a lot of questions. So we're gonna go through them one at a time, and you're gonna do your best to answer them. It's very simple and basic.
Like whatever there's like situations like this, if Lauren just says like you have a green light, which scares me because obviously you don't want to like overshare certain things, but we'll see. Maybe he'll be in my DMs after this is done.
Yeah, we'll see. That might happen. It's interesting. So I think you do your best to try to be as responsible as you can. I know you. It feels so weird. I was just saying to a couple of friends before this, like, okay, so I'm gonna be the host with an basically actual host since before. How is this gonna work? It's like
I can take direction fairly okay, I'd say. So I think we should be good.
Yeah, I think so as well. And also for everyone in the chat, feel free to ask your questions. We'll see if we have time to get into some of those as well. But first, we're gonna go with the questions that we have received on Twitter. So let's get it going. Are we ready? All right, cool. Again, I'm gonna have to apologize for not saying these names correct. I had a lot of issues last month with Forrest, so it's probably not going to be any better today, but I'll do my best to say these names correct. Fangry, I can do that. He asks, or she asks, how have you worked to incorporate Harre and Heap into the team, being that you have varying experience levels across players? See, I can't even read. You got it?
Yeah. Obviously, like anytime you incorporate new players into a team, it's going to be more of a lengthy process than probably some do expect, because there's a lot of like fine details and everything that you need to iron out. And obviously, they come from a different background of Counter-Strike, obviously, where they're used to doing things a certain way, which might be better, might not be as optimal, and all that. And you need to kind of find that golden middle ground where they can be comfortable enough to perform at a high level while also doing things that make sense within the team. What we've done so far is, I guess we've kept it fairly simple. And again, we do run throughs and kind of like Counter-Strike theory, if you want to put it that way, ahead of every practice every day, where we run through strats like to the finest detail and so on to make sure that everybody's on board with what they're meant to do at any given time. And I think that's like the most optimal way of actually making them making that they feel certain of what's going on in a given round, which gives them more basically headspace to actually just focus on shooting it in front of them and actually being aware of their surroundings without necessarily that taking up too much attention. But yeah, they're pretty much being implemented as any players would. Obviously, like if you have more experienced guys, they'd probably be. I guess they might have more input, or might actually be more difficult to implement in some cases, just because they're so set in their ways. So I don't think we've experienced too many issues. Obviously, like we started off with certain positions in mind, obviously, like filling the spots that exist in Get Right. In those spots where we didn't really feel like Hallzerk, Freiburg, or Forrest were needed to be moved or anything like that. So it's been a pretty smooth transition. But since we started, we have changed up a couple of positions simply because of what they have played in the past, and also how it kind of hits us that it actually makes sense to let them keep running with what they've been doing for their Counter-Strike career so far, because it doesn't necessarily mess up the fluidity in our play, or it doesn't really put people out of positions where they're not familiar.
Yeah, that's a good answer. It's a lot of info. People will appreciate that. It's cool. We're gonna go straight into the next question.
Have at it.
Yonsh11. Is it different for you now that you have experienced different iterations of the roster, and also just in general from your experience, to work with the younger and less experienced players than with the old experienced ones? And if so, what is different?
Yeah, I'd definitely say there's a big difference. And again, it's like it has its upsides and it has its downsides. Obviously, when you're dealing with very experienced players like Get and Exist are, then certain things just kind of happen naturally where there's not necessarily a need for micromanagement or things of that nature. But with experienced players as well, again, it's like this comfort zone that you've kind of gotten used to staying in, that again might limit your play style. It might limit how the team is able to run in certain situations, and that's definitely like a change up with the new guys. They are just as players much more aggressive in their play style. They're much more, I guess, fearless and just running through stuff and running into sites and that kind of things, which allows us to differently from how we did in the past. Again, we can implement more, I guess, what you probably look at as random moves, within a game, simply off of the fact that yeah, they can kind of just like put the pedal to the floor and have at it. And it's interesting as well, right? Because these are guys who've been and existing, right? They've been around Forest and Freiburg and so on for so long that you kind of get used to the environment, and there's not necessarily that much of there's not that much new impulses happening, right? So you kind of go forward when you try to improve and so on in a pretty familiar fashion. Whereas with the new guys, you get a new way of thinking about stuff. Hara obviously used to play for Nordavind, who had their fair share of different in-game leaders and just different players from different countries as well, that always bring something different that you could potentially implement. So I'd say the two new guys are surprisingly outspoken when it comes to like having ideas of how to either fix a round or how to run through something mid round while it's happening, which is not something we necessarily would have expected out of them. Obviously, being new, it's kind of hard to find your voice when you have very, very experienced guys around you. But I think they've done an excellent job in just that sense. And that obviously is great for me as well. Just, sitting in the server, being able to, learn from them, and again picking up new impulses and getting new ideas from what they're suggesting and so on. So I'd say there's a lot more brainstorming in that sense from this team.
Very cool. Blazy asks, do you think you will ever go back to being a desk talent, or is it coaching that you want to do now for the foreseeable future?
You're never meant to say never, but I think for the foreseeable future, I'd like to stick with coaching. Again, it's a really fun challenge, and obviously the competitor in me, having played competitive before I did desk work, has definitely missed that part of it, because obviously like I'm in no shape, as for those who saw me standing in versus Lyngby, like that, I'm in no shape to actually play Counter-Strike myself at a high level. Those days have gone by quite a few years ago, but the interest in competing and the wish to compete is still obviously very much there. So it's a more engaging challenge, simply put, to be a coach and actually work with a team, and obviously go through ups and downs. But seeing progress is something that I really cherish, and that's something I think is really exciting, that motivates me. So I don't see myself hopping away from this anytime soon. So as long as they want me around, I guess I'll want to stick to it.
Sounds like a good plan. It's funny that you mentioned standing in. That's the next question. Shinjin Wook asks, how did it feel filling in for Freiburg against Lyngby Vikings?
I'll say it is great fun, because obviously the four guys, the four other guys are obviously super encouraging and they treat me like an equal, even though they probably shouldn't in that instance. But again, like they'll play for me in terms of like putting me in a position where I can actually do stuff, because that's what teams do. And then obviously watch me fail horribly. But it was really fun. But I definitely noticed that the game is sped up quite a bit. Since I've last played actively. Again, players are just way sharper when it comes to their mechanics and so on. So whereas I might have had that 0.3 seconds to react properly or adjust to something years back, that's not the case anymore. Now you just get instant from whoever shows up, and just the general level of players in CSGO nowadays is insanely high compared to what it was, if you go back 8 years, which is expected. But yeah, it's I'm definitely not at that level anymore. But it was good fun, it's an experience for sure. But going further, into the future, I think I'm going to try to avoid being actually playing on the server as much as possible.
I get that. That's cool. Next question is kind of in the same style, but it's like Victor asks, like, what's your rank in matchmaking and your level in FACEIT? He also says, love you, brother. I can promise you are number one on the number one spot on HLTV 2020.
I might have to get in a couple more hours of DM for that to happen. I guess right now I don't have a rank on matchmaking, but I pretty much got global 2 days after it came out to CSGO, and pretty much stayed global since then. So there hasn't really been much of an incentive to ever play matchmaking for me. My FACEIT level right now, quite unsure, but I jumped between like 2,200 elo to 1,800 elo, depending on how bad of a streak I have going. Definitely need to sort that out. So when I get a little bit of extra free time, I'm gonna get my way up to like 2.2k or above in the future. But right now, I'd probably say, I'd probably be like a level 9 at the moment right now. But I blame Halzek and Hart for not carrying me in FACEIT stacks.
Oh, that's good. Draco Wow asks, is there a certain inspiration for this new lineup? For example, like FaZe picking up an inexperienced FPL player, or do you do things completely on your own, in your own way?
I mean, I guess in one way, not necessarily that FaZe itself was inspiration with the pickups of Brokey and BMOS, even though they've obviously showcased to be solid players. BMOS obviously not with FaZe anymore, but he's in Mousesports doing a good job. That wasn't necessarily the goal when we were looking for players, but it's a nice bonus, I guess I could say, to have someone who's like young and really eager, hungry to improve. Like Heap, for instance, is the kind of guy who will have 7 to 8 hours of practice, and when we're finished, an hour later, he's had his food break again. So now he's back to streaming and playing FACEIT pugs, until the late hours. And you just kind of, it's motivational for everyone to kind of see the amount of effort and work that they put in outside of just, I guess, the mandated hours, if you could put it that way, during practice. So that's obviously been a positive side effect of picking up someone who's new and fresh. And I think by picking up rather inexperienced players as well, you have a better chance of kind of shaping them and as players, because I think a lot of people underestimate how big of a change up it is from obviously being like an FPL star or just someone who's really good in pugs and mixers to playing professional Counter-Strike. Like the way you play professional Counter-Strike is so different from how a pug environment is, and even obviously like tier 3 or lower level Counter-Strike as well, even though it's team based. So with young players who doesn't necessarily have that much baggage with them coming into a team, they're more susceptible to actually acclimating properly to changes and playing new positions or doing stuff differently, I'd say, in many cases.
Very cool. There's a lot of questions that we have basically already answered, so I'm gonna skip a few here. This one is pretty good though, if in case people haven't really gotten the whole story of how you became the coach. So Gustav Edward asks, why did you go from commentator / analyst to be the head coach of Dignitas?
I guess it's somewhat random, as many things I've done in my life has ended up being, or how they have transpired has been a bit random. But obviously, like doing talent work and that kind of stuff was my full-time job for nearly 5 years, and it was basically at the start of 2020 when I guess everything was a little bit uncertain in terms of what was going on with events and that kind of stuff. If everything is being held online, is there actually going to be enough work to go around really to stay afloat? That kind of thing. But it was kind of at random that I saw Fifth Lauren basically putting out a tweet saying that they were looking for analysts for their team. And obviously, I've known Robin for many years, and he's someone who I've always just enjoyed talking Counter-Strike with. So I'd figured, I asked, like, again, this is not something I'm going to be able to do, 100%. Basically, I had a job with TV2 in Norway as well, doing Counter-Strike stuff. So I wouldn't be able to basically take up a 100% position, but I was just curious if he would be interested in my services, I guess, in any percentage. And he was super open to it, and really accommodating in terms of just making it work with either doing events or having to do broadcasts in Norway. And from there on out, it kind of just grew. I went from pretty much just doing preliminary analyst reports on our opponents and whatnot to starting to sit in on practice. And as Fifth Lauren basically ended up getting an offer for a new job and a promotion, he asked the guys, or he basically told them, like, I'm going to be leaving my position, and we're going to have to find a new coach. And the answer from all the guys were like, okay, well, why can't we just go with Vendetta? So one thing kind of led to another. It was a pretty smooth transition, I suppose, in that sense, because one day I show up on the server as an analyst, sitting on the practice, and the next day I'm just the head coach.
Yep. Edgy Man asks, what do you do on your spare time?
Oh, what spare time? I guess not that big of a surprise, but a fair bit of my spare time I do, especially now, obviously during a pandemic, there's not exactly a lot of going out and meeting people. So a lot of my time is spent either playing Counter-Strike or watching Counter-Strike. I am a bit of a CS addict in that sense. But yeah, no, I try to get a couple of hours of other games in as well. I like to play Dota. I like to play WoW, and obviously with the new expansion, that's going to be pretty hype. Sadly, that's obviously being released in the midst of Flashpoint, so I have to have my priorities straight. But just I really like playing games. I spend a lot of time on the computer, and whatever's left, talking to my girlfriend who currently is stuck in Ukraine. So we try to just talk on the phone as much as possible and make that long distance during a pandemic issue as easy as possible.
Yeah, can't wait for Shadowlands. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be sick.
I'll follow your footsteps and I'll wait. I'll promise.
Yeah, no, I can see that you're gonna be like 60 by within 24 hours of release.
Probably.
Given that Blizzard servers actually stay online.
Yeah. All right. Back to Kelly asks, what is a typical day / week? What does it look like for you?
Basically, the normal day for us, at least now that we're ramping up and obviously like prepping for a tournament and so on, like Flashpoint, we'll start our days at 11 o'clock. Basically go through, I guess, the map of the day, which is pretty much whatever map we feel is the most shaky. in our map pool, or the one that has the most evident issues. So it's not necessarily based strictly off of results, but it's more of how convincing are we when we're playing the map. And again, you can play solid and still lose practice games, but if you're running through what you're meant to do, and you can tell that there's no like overbearing or like no major issues really, then it's not as pressing of an issue. Whereas you have certain maps where like certain play styles just destroy you completely, so you have to look into that. You have to find something that you can combat that with, and be prepared when it might happen in the future again. So that's pretty much what we spend the first hour of the day doing. On some days we'll extend that, I guess, theory hour, if you want to call it that, to add demo reviews, even either of our past matches, or just to simply get a concept or new ideas from different teams and see how they're playing out situations where we've experienced problems ourselves. And then obviously like figuring out how we're going to apply that to our own team, because just straight up copy pasting everything without fully understanding why a team is doing X, Y, and Z, that's not going to work in the long run. So that's pretty much how we start off our day. And then it's practice from 1 to 2, and then we have a food break at 3. It lasts to 4, and then from 4 and out till about 8 o'clock, we basically just have practice games. So it's a lot of Counter-Strike. And if we're leading up to a official match, when practice ends, basically my day isn't necessarily over. I'll go through whatever team we're playing in our upcoming game, watch their most recent demos on whatever we think might go through, in a veto. Obviously, most teams have a set permaban, but in the cases where that's still 6 maps that you kind of have to like make up in your head how you think you're going to follow through, especially if they have the same veto as you. So there's a fair bit of demo watching to kind of get a good idea of how they like to play, but also a fine line of not obviously just building your entire game on trying to anti-strat that. That's actually like one of the mistakes we did versus Mad Lions in our opening game in Flashpoint on Overpass, because we played it a lot. We felt really confident in how we were playing in practice, and we ended up getting into we ended up getting sidetracked from focusing on what we're doing really well in practice to being overly focused on what Mad Lions were doing efficiently all the time, and we tried combating that with stuff we haven't practiced, which obviously isn't a recipe for success. So yeah, trying to find that fine balance between, again, understanding what a team likes to do, how they rotate, and how they play out certain scenarios, and while still, again, staying true to what you've been working on.
Cool. The days are long and intense, which is good.
Yeah, no, they have to be. And again, it's always fun because when you do these kind of things, it's like the more work you put in, the more rewarding it feels as well when you see basically the fruits of your labor paying off, right? And that doesn't necessarily equate to obviously always winning, but again, just seeing improvement, as I mentioned earlier, like that's super motivating for everyone, just to see that, okay, that a little bit of time we put into doing this actually helped us immensely here, and that's something we can build upon and take further.
Yeah. All right. Some questions from the Dig staff. Let's start with Ricardo. He asks, do you have any career regrets?
Career regrets. Okay, this is okay. I'll preface this by saying, it's not necessarily a career regret, and I will say stay in school. But I started basically once I was done with my national service, I jumped directly into university. But I did it more so out of the feeling of I have to do it because everyone else around me is doing it. And I didn't go into a study that actually interested me or that I thought I would ever work with, which obviously in hindsight sounds pretty stupid. And it turned out it was pretty stupid as well. But that definitely killed a lot of motivation to pursue, like a university, a long university degree and things like that. So I bounced around a fair few bachelor programs in my early 20s to kind of see what could suit me, and it definitely didn't do wonders for my mental health, to put it that way. But I guess in one way, being so down on that is kind of what gave me the extra push to fully pursue doing Counter-Strike and giving that my all. So because I felt like I didn't have anything to gain from continuing there. So I guess my one career regret of starting that actually ended up, leading to the best decision I've ever made.
Yeah, that is definitely relatable for, at least for me, and probably a lot of other gamers as well.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, Heather Sapphire. What is your proudest moment in your esports career?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Heather's asking some really tough questions here. There's a lot. Okay, so I'm not sure if I can fully call it esports, obviously, because when we were young, things weren't, that lucrative. It's really hard to being a full-time pro when, the prize pool is $1,000 and a, can of Coke. Like,
Yeah,
hard to live off of that. But again, like just basically winning tournaments. Like one of them would be winning the first CS:GO tournament in Norway. Versus guys like PRB. Obviously ended up playing in Mousesports and so on. That was a really good feeling, again, just kind of solidifying myself as or being in the best team in Norway at the time. That was really good fun. Doing finals of Katowice in 2015 from a broadcasting point of view was absolutely insane. For many reasons. One, I was meant to go there only as an observer, and D-Man, who had hired me for the event, said, bring a nice shirt because you might end up doing, like a desk segment or two. And I ended up basically doubling the entire event. So whenever I was on the desk, Yanko would hop on as an observer, and I ended up doing a majority of the playoffs pretty much as an analyst. And stepping into the Katowice arena for literally every playoff match was just an absolutely amazing experience. It's like the first time I've ever had pain in my ears that felt good, because the crowd was just so loud and so enthusiastic, regardless of who was on stage. Like obviously VP didn't win in 2015, etc. But like if it was NIP and Fnatic coming out on the stage, they were extremely hyped, shouting, screaming for every moment that happened. It was just an incredible atmosphere that I obviously, like, up to that point, would have had a real hard time believing could have happened for, Counter-Strike. Because again, if you're as old as you and me are, we're kind of used to the gyms, the gymnasium lands, like that kind of stuff, which, it's fun in itself when you have 10 people standing behind you being like, oh man, what a sick shot. But it's very different to have, 10,000 plus people screaming and being excited for the exact same reason you're excited about the game, and for the same reason that you've been, doing it for so many years. So yeah, doing the finals in Katowice probably is like the very tippy top for me.
Yeah, God, you're making me so hyped for events.
I miss them
Can we
so
please
much.
just make it happen? Let's get over this stupid pandemic. Let's go out and travel again.
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's been a bummer of a year. Let's look forward. Let's hope during next year we can actually go to an event, because we
crossing fingers.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Kat, another staff question here. What does it feel like entering into the top level of play with legendary players around you? How does that affect your mental game? Do you ever feel like you need to uphold that standard?
Oh no, absolutely. And again, it feels kind of surreal, especially like, even though I'm only 1 year younger than Forrest. Forrest has obviously been like someone who's been, I guess, an idol to pretty much everyone who grew up playing Counter-Strike for 15 plus years. So actually getting to the point where like we're on the same team and all that kind of stuff feels not real at times, or did at first. Same thing with like having feedback to these kind of players, obviously, who have won pretty much everything there is to win, and having it recognized as valuable feedback and all that kind of stuff is interesting. But absolutely something that I've appreciated, and obviously, like, when you see how much work and effort they put into what they do, that is obviously an explanation as to how they've stuck around for so long. It's obviously something that you aspire to do yourself. You don't want to necessarily be that weak link, that breaks something apart. You want to make sure that you've done enough work to basically have earned your place. So absolutely try to uphold myself to the highest of standards to match, obviously what some of these guys around me are already doing.
Very cool. I think you know this guy. His name is Forrest. He asks, what is your stance on ketchup?
Myself, okay, this might disappoint. I know this is going to score me bonus points with Holzark, but might just sever, friendships, ties, and respect amongst the other guys. I love ketchup. I'm not as much of a ketchup fanatic as Holzark. I don't think anyone in the world is. Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, no, ketchup goes on so many things. I will say I don't put ketchup on steaks. Like that's not even me. But yeah, no, I do love ketchup, man. It's the perfect condiment. Like I always get like ugly looks whenever, you go to McDonald's and you get like nuggets or something, and everybody's going like, oh, you need barbecue sauce, or you need like this funky sauce that I've never heard of. And I'm like, nah, all I need is ketchup. It's perfect. It's brilliant. It's all you need.
All right. Holzark approved, I'm sure. All right. You kind of answered this question already, but since we're doing the Dig staff questions here, Mel asks, are there any games you play outside of CSGO that you enjoy?
I guess I can expand on it as well. I'm like a true gamer at heart in that sense. But again, sadly, there's only 24 hours in a day, so there's not enough time to play. But again, been loving Among Us. That's been absolutely fantastic. Been playing a lot of Rogue Legacy lately. WoW is obviously a game that's going to be played a lot more as we move into a new expansion. Formula One, I got into because of the other guys, because they're become really big Formula One fans. So I try to stay on track, obviously, but I'm not as good as them. But it's still really good fun. But yeah, there's pretty much tons of games that I love to play, and Dota is probably one of the games that I put in. It is the game that I put the most hours in outside of Counter-Strike, I'd say.
All right. One more. No, we have two more questions from the staff. We're gonna go through them as well. Then we're gonna have to speed it up a bit.
All right.
So Ashley asks, who was your role model growing up and why?
Role model, just like within esports or just in general?
Doesn't say. You go ahead.
I could do two. Role model growing up, I guess, like the big idol. I, as many others in Europe, played football when I was a kid, and my favorite player was Alan Shearer. And because of that, now lifelong Newcastle fan, which is not the most fun at times, but you kind of just got to commit to the team you started rooting for when you were a kid. But Alan Shearer, yeah, he was a definite role model in that sense, because you wanted to be the best football player you could be, and in my eyes, Alan Shearer was the best striker in the Premier League. So he was definitely an early influence in terms of CS. Role models, Forrest already mentioned. Hyper from the old SK squad was definitely one of them as well. And I'd probably have to say Existence as well, the French game leader from the old Very Games teams, simply because that was the first time I ever ran into a team that I had no clue what to do against. When we played each other in tournaments, I ended up, like, in the 7 international tournaments I played in CS Source, I ended up in groups with Very Games in all of them. And this was at a period where if you played Very Games, you just lost. And that's just how it was. It's kind of like NIP in 2012, 2013, or Astralis in 2018. and I guess every other team would play. I kind of figured like, yeah, I have an idea of what we can do here to get rounds, but versus very games and existence, it was just like, well, my screen turned white, I'm flashed, 5 seconds, I'm still flashed, all right, and now I'm dead. Okay, new round, cool. And that was kind of just the entire experience of playing him, and for that reason, you kind of started to really respect the work you put in, but also start loving the nitty gritty parts of Counter-Strike, of how like just finding the pinpoint flashes and nades and everything really just made a massive difference.
All right. Typo asks, if you didn't play CSGO, what other esport would you like to go pro in? Or I guess work within?
I would love to be good at Dota because it's just so damn hard. And it's a game that fascinates me. Again, it's just like endless depth of learning and understanding mechanics and so on, which I think is really cool. And it's a game that still develops. I'd say as well, again, as unreasonable as it sounds, I would have loved to be a StarCraft professional as well, because that's like outside of Counter-Strike, StarCraft was the first esports that I started watching heavily. Like I would catch every tournament and just be in awe of how quick they were and how good they were at the game. So obviously, you get envious and you want to replicate that when you jump into your own ranked matchmaking, and then obviously fumble it 20 seconds in. But yeah, I would have loved to be a StarCraft pro.
Very cool. All right, let's fire through a lot of them, rapid fire style now.
All right, let's go.
Okay, cool. Evil Monster asks, what's the plan in Q1 next year regarding the team? I know it's near impossible to plan LANs and stuff, but where do you see the team going? Top 30? Question mark?
Top 30? Absolutely. That is absolutely something. And that's something I think we're going to be able to achieve. Like, don't take this arrogantly, but I think that we'll achieve that without too much of an issue. And again, top 30 is not the end goal for us. Obviously, we want to be a team that competes at the biggest tournaments around. And obviously, yeah, hard to say when these tournaments will actually happen at a LAN event, but we're really looking forward to it because we know obviously that we're the kind of team that plays better in an offline environment.
All right. Arya, another big staff member. How much did you invest in CSGO cases or skins?
This is going to surprise a lot of people. I think I've probably bought cases for a total or cases and keys for a total of 100 to 120 euros since they released. Because I'm a very stingy person when it comes to that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I just didn't get that caught by like the hype of it. Even though I think skins are cool and everything, the skin I wanted wasn't necessarily always for the gun I wanted it to be on. So I didn't really see or feel the need to buy a bunch of cases, and I knew I was never getting a knife anyway. So
exactly, it's impossible. Hasn't happened for me. Probably never will.
You're still opening though. Still opening.
Well, 2 times per year maybe. Let's move on here. Let's move on. Ayo asks, favorite food and favorite movie.
Favorite food, probably tacos. Actually, yeah, I'll say tacos. I'm gonna just add an honorable mention for nuggets. Favorite movie, Once Upon a Time in Mexico, but not because it's a great movie. More about the setting of how I remember seeing it the first time, just being surrounded with friends and just having a really good night.
Awesome. Speaking of chicken nuggets, Food with Mel asks, how many chicken nuggets can you eat in a day, and what's the best nugget sauce?
Best nugget sauce, again, if Mel, I'm pretty sure I've seen this from Mel's Twitter and Instagram, that she's a bit of a foodie, so she might just have a slight heart attack from this. But again, best sauce, ketchup, unrivaled. And the most nuggets I've eaten in a day, and I'll say like this is like one sitting I'll go with, is I think it was 55.
Jesus, man.
Yeah, no, it's just like my stomach's like bottomless when it comes to nuggets.
All right. Manimal asks, favorite celebrity and why?
Favorite celebrity? Ooh. I'll say like teenage me would say Jessica Alba. just because she was the most gorgeous woman I'd ever seen. Favorite celebrity outside of that? Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Always really liked Leonardo DiCaprio as an actor. So yeah, probably one of those two.
Cool. Balter Olsen asks, what's the most common mistake you see players struggling with that hinders them from reaching the top tier of CS?
It's different from every player, but I guess for newer, younger players is lack of adaptation. Not necessarily their own fault, but obviously if you kind of grow up with CS and a pug environment, you're going to create a lot of bad habits for yourself, and you're not going to be that balanced of a player. You kind of just have one mode, which is W, and kind of live and die by that, which is not always, where it's more often than not going to work in a proper team environment. You're going to get punished over and over again. So that and kind of realizing your own shortcomings, being open to criticism, obviously constructive criticism, but yeah, being open to input from people around you, I'd say is something that hinders many people's careers. And for those who make it, initially, the biggest killer for their careers is laziness, straight up.
All right. Sorry, this is from Olivia, I think. How is the overall CS community adjusting from LAN to playing at home due to COVID? What are the major setbacks, and do you see any positives?
One upside initially is less travel days, which is great for players because that's just physically exhausting, having to basically spend a week in one country and the only downtime you have is sitting on a plane and then having the 1 or 2 days off at a new tournament or a new hotel to kind of recoup. That's so not having that is an upside, even though obviously right now the schedule is pretty packed with events going left and right. So players aren't necessarily getting that much more downtime, but at least they're not getting physically exhausted, but they might get mentally exhausted, which is one of the biggest negatives of the online era. And obviously, again, just as weird as it might sound, online Counter-Strike and LAN Counter-Strike is two entirely different worlds. It's just two different beasts. Most of the time, you'll see LAN CS being played, I guess, in general, just more in a more timid way. People aren't necessarily that eager to make crazy plays or run through smokes. They're a bit more methodical in their approach of how they do stuff. Why that is, absolutely no clue. Might be the pressure of the crowd, not wanting to mess up on a big stage and that kind of stuff, and you don't feel that the same pressure when you're sitting in your apartment, in your own office, where you've kind of been honing your skills for so many years. That's as comfortable as you can possibly get. So yeah, I'd say there's more downsides to this than upsides, but obviously some of the upsides are really good because you don't want players to get burnt out and really struggle due to the excessive travel schedule that some of these teams have.
Awesome. Let It Noah asks, in general, what are your views on the CSGO community and how it can advance over the next 5 years?
My general views, I've always been a big fan of the CS community as a whole. Again, I might have been one of the luckier ones in terms of how I felt with them being receptive to things or just enjoyable to be around. Obviously, that varies from part or from place to place. Everyone is going to have a run-in with someone who's having a bad day and creates a pretty awful environment. But overall, as a whole, I've never had any qualms with the CS:GO community. One of the things I love as well is that it seems like a lot of people who play CS like casually also are very enthused and very excited about professional play as well, which I think is great. It kind of reminds me more of like like a traditional sports scenario where you and me, we're never going to be ice hockey pros or play in the Premier League, but we can still sit down and enjoy NHL matches and football matches. And I like the fact that CS is that kind of a game that that allows for it. I think it's great. We have so many like contributors within the community, whether it's like the fact that you think about the map pool in Counter-Strike has, for the majority of the history of the game, has been community created maps. It's always been someone who's like, okay, I like playing Counter-Strike. Oh, mapping is cool. I've made a map for Counter-Strike, and now that's, that becomes one of the most iconic things across all esports, right? Because CSR or CS maps are so unique that you have a lot of the same maps sticking around for nearly 20 years. I think that's awesome, and I think that still very much lives in Counter-Strike community today. It's just one thing I will say that has kind of died down is the enthusiasm around community play. And when I say that, I mean like it feels like Valve has kind of hidden away the option of the server browser where you could always just jump on, find like a custom map, whether it's like Pool Day or Scouts Knives and all of these kind of fun maps. They've been harder to find. So I don't think we're seeing that enough, because there's a ton of creativity within the CSGO community, whether it's through map making or memes or cool videos of montages and highlights that should be showcased more. And I think we have a lot of it. So I would love to see like that being platformed more by Valve, but can't always get everything to line up perfectly in that sense. But yeah, overall, 2 thumbs up for the CSGO community.
I agree. It's an awesome community. All right, I'm gonna grab 2 questions from the Twitch chat, and then we have 2 more from my doc here. So we'll go to
right.
the Landor in Twitch chat. He asks, "What is your dream lineup solely based on appearance and looks?"
Oh, it's solely based on appearance and looks. Okay, so there's 2 people who immediately go into the lineup, and that's Sean Gears and Jax from G2. Then we got to have someone who can, champion our skincare product line that we're obviously going to be creating, and that would be Seized, because I've never seen a person with cleaner skin in my life. As for the next 2, we need the kind of person who gets the rugged crowd to Taloma as well. So Force goes in there as well. He's got the manliest beard in Counter-Strike, so we got to have him in there. And for the 5th spot,
I'm gonna have to agree with Sinkas here in chat. Dosia, where's Dosia?
And obviously, the 5th spot goes to the X-God himself.
Nice.
I think we have a pretty well-rounded lineup that would obviously do really well, but obviously break many hearts.
Yeah.
Obviously not on the server, but just outside.
Very cool. All right. We have our very own Fiflauren in the chat as well. He asks, "What is your best CS source memory?"
Ooh, best CS source memory. One is probably, it's hard to pick one. One of them would be being called a cheater by ZRZ from the old Redline lineup. Fiflauren will know who this is. This is basically what transitioned into becoming the Very Games team. As we had our opening game at the Experience in Roskilde in 2006 or 7 it was. That would definitely be one of them, just because that was in a way where that's kind of like acknowledgement of the fact that people think you're good, when it's obviously the case that you're not cheating. Outside of that, one of my coolest moments actually was against Fiflauren. He'll probably not remember this at all, but this is right after I had transitioned from 1.6 to CSS, and we played the ICC Cup, which is the Insignia Cadre Cup, and the Insignia Cadre was pretty much to source what HLTV is to CSGO. And they'd hosted a massive tournament. It was like 512 teams or something. And we ended up playing Fiflauren when he was playing, I think he was playing for either Volt Gaming or actually Dignitas at the time, would be, if it was Dignitas, it would be kind of funny how everything looped around again. But we played them on Contra, and we lost 16-14 in a match that we definitely feel like we should have won. But that was the pretty immediately after switching to Source, that was the first time people ever recognized us from that point on. So that got us the invites to the practice channels and all that kind of stuff that established myself within the Source community, and that was so one of the coolest moments was actually losing to Flarn.
See, that makes him happy. Now this
is how I keep my job.
Exactly, like we're all good for now. Okay, final question. This has been a reoccurring question for these AMAs, so here it goes. Dr. Alfredo Pennywu asks, and finally, the question that has made it to all of our Vi AMAs. If you could be any fruit, what would you be?
If I could be any fruit, what would I be? See, this is the thing. I hate fruit. So this is actually no. I'd be a mango. Mango is the one juice that I really like, and the one that I find tolerable, I guess I should say, is mango. So I'd have to go with the one fruit that's kind of been my friend through these 31 years.
Nice. If I remember correctly, I think Forrest said he would be a pineapple.
I heard that. I didn't really get his justification for it, but that's his spirit fruit, I guess.
Yeah. And yours is a mango. Really cool. All right, Vendetta. Thank you. I think this was awesome. Once again, thanks to everyone who sent in their questions. Obviously, we'll be back next month with one other player. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who yet, but I can say that it isn't Forrest and it isn't Vendetta. So you figure it out.
I wonder who.
Yeah. So we have a giveaway, obviously. So head over to vi.gg on Twitter to see if you won the jersey. That's a cool prize. The jersey looks sick. I love it. I wish it was clean. I would have worn it now, but
I mean, it's actually so nice that Customs right now is holding on to mine.
Yeah, it's a shame you haven't.
They just like it too much. They don't want to share it with me.
No, it's a shame, but it's probably getting there sooner
crossing
or
my
later.
Fingers. I hope so.
Would be cool to have everyone wear them on Thursday for the next big game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out as well. Thursday, what is it? 2?
2 CET.
CET, it's the time zone.
Playing versus Fnatic.
That is going to be a new version of what we in Sweden call the El Clasico. Perhaps we'll see, but it's going to be a good game. Very excited about that, and thanks to Vi for doing this AMA. Make sure to follow the channel to see when we go live next time. Again, new player December, probably going to be a bit of a Christmas special. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks, Vendetta.
Thank you for having me.